it's just compounding. Set your goals, work on them for a long duration, and you'll see some rewards for those things. Timing is key, but perseverance and survival really does win the day. And the point I would make to most entrepreneurs is do everything you can to stay alive so that you can be in position when you can catch the wave, catch the moment, maybe catch lightning in a bottle and have that crazy outcome.
Welcome to Trailblazers, the podcast where we sit down with contrarian tech leaders who found conventional success in unconventional ways. So today on the show, I am so thrilled to be joined by Nicolas Cary. Nick is the co-founder and vice chairman at blockchain.com. He is responsible for bringing new adopters into the crypto ecosystem. A fascination with tech, money, and politics led Nick to become deeply passionate about helping people reinvent their relationship with money. After an international upbringing, Nick worked as a teacher in India before becoming a founding team member at SaaS company PipelineCRM.com, where he focused on product development and management. A trilingual communicator, Nick is the founding commissioner of the Blockchain Commission for Sustainable Development and co-author of The Future is Decentralized. Deeply passionate about entrepreneurship, Nick is also co-founder and chairman of Sky'sTheLimit.org, the leading nonprofit digital business accelerator. Regularly cited in the global press as one of the earliest crypto industry experts, Nick was named the European Digital Leader of the Year in 2015 and honored with a Professional Achievement Award in 2017 by his alma mater, the University of Puget Sound. A proven leader, investor, public speaker, and brand ambassador, Nick focuses on designing performant cultures that persevere in adverse markets. Let's welcome Nicolas Cary.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. What a bio.
Yeah, it's weird to hear it out loud.
I know. That's why I love doing it, so people have to sit in the discomfort of it. Yeah. I love how so much of what you've done has really sat at the intersection of so many different industries. You've got these really interesting, obviously, for-profit businesses that you've built, nonprofit work that you're doing now, author even we can sprinkle in there. How do you think about where you sit across all these different sides of industry, right? Because you're not just a for-profit guy. You care a lot about impact and nonprofit work too.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it comes down to sort of knowing what you care about. And I feel like I sort of got there pretty young. And when I was 18, I think the vast majority of my personality was quite forged. And I was always someone that appreciated competitive sports. I really liked serving my community. I had a crazy sort of addiction to understanding politics and foreign affairs. It had no relevance to my day-to-day life, but I was just totally interested in it. And so one of the things I encourage people I speak to that are sort of overwhelmed by what's going on in the world today or what paths to pursue is kind of just to start practicing a bunch of different things. And so you can practice entrepreneurship, you can practice basketball, you can practice being a servant to your community. And basically, you're sort of building up muscles when you do those things. And at the end of the day, you read a long bio about me, but when I'm 6 feet under, it'll just say, Nick was born this day, died this date, and he was survived by his spouse and hopefully some family and kids. And all the rest of it, is just those are sort of resume virtues, but they're not really legacy virtues. And I think you have to have sort of a longer term sort of hopefully I would say measured perspective on what your role in your life is going to do. And so I'm trying to think about those things on a fairly active basis. And when I was younger, I'd sort of forged those things, and I've been working on them for a long time. And I honestly think you have to one of the most misunderstood rules in the world is, and Einstein explained this and was it's just compounding. And if you direct energy and effort across a variety of different initiatives, whether it's investment in friends or investment in your education or investment in actual wealth instruments, have a long-term time horizon for it, and those things compound over time. And so set your goals, work on them for long duration, and and you'll see some rewards for those things.
I love that. I'm also obsessed with compounding. I'm kind of annoying about it because I always talk about it. But when you talk about putting your energy into so many different areas, people always say I only have so many hours in the day and
True.
I'm so tired. So do you have even a recommendation of energy output? Because you're someone that does so much and you come across as someone with so much energy and so much passion even at 18. What's your recommendation for oh wow, okay, let's say someone has 4 or 5 different interest areas. How do they try everything when they're tired? There's a lot going on.
I remember when I was in my 20s, I was tired a lot. And it turns out I actually I have a sleeping disorder. So it wasn't just that I was actually tired from working a lot or trying to be overly socialized or whatever. But this is one of those things that is so you're not ready to hear about it when you're younger, and older mentors and role models are usually trying to tell us things, but we are not ready to hear them all the time. And one of those things that you'll hear, and it'll make sense at some point, is that you do have to take care of your health. And it's like you put your mask on first before you help others, and those types of messages are sort of trying to be taught to younger generations. And so it is about basically like managing your wellness first before you can invest a lot of energy into a bunch of different causes. But if you are taking care of your health, your sleep, your activity, learning, then you're going to be taking care of your mind, you're going to be taking care of your body, and you're going to have more capacity to take things on. So that's one perspective. The other thing that's true is that you probably do have like more energy, coming out of your teens and into your 20s than
biology.
You will. Yeah, your biology is your advantage for that decade, and so you kind of need to lean into that a little bit. I think I had something like maybe a balance of 1,000 nights I could use to not sleep, and I cashed them all in before I was 30. I can't do that anymore, and so now how I manage my time is really sort of dedicated in strict blocks where I'm really concentrated and show up. And one of the things that's become true is, and I'm interested to hear your views on this actually, but like I spent 20 years working basically in the tech space, and we went from long form emails and written memos for things to shorter form content to constant drip information, and then it's attacking you from Slack to Signal to Telegram to WhatsApp to Discord servers to Twitter and more. And so your ability to think deeply and longer term is being unprogrammed. And so there's a necessity now to actually try and shut things down. And I don't know if this is because I grew up working in these longer format environments, but now in order for me to be most effective, I have to be very concentrated, show up very present, and wind down or shut down these what I would describe as auditory or visual distractions. And so it's just dedication and being concentrated on different things at different times, and then really showing up for those things and being 100% into in those moments. Like Jamie Dimon, who's controversial in some ways, for his very strict stance on coming back to work. I think
he's JP Morgan for anyone who doesn't know.
So he's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and he hated Zoom, and he was just you guys aren't paying attention. I can see it, and he's not entirely wrong about the importance of being present. That's really what he's saying. It's I'm showing up, I'm being present in these experiences, these moments, and there's a lot to be learned in person, and I think there's going to be a reaction to this overly digital way of working in some ways, which. I'm trying to sound like an old person now. I'm 40 years old, but I'm trying to get to the point of you just need to find some balance with it all. And honestly, what works for me may not be the same thing that works for you, and you may have a higher capacity for short form communication than other people do. But again, it's just about finding your medium that works and your balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also so much of what works for me is removing all notifications.
Right. That's a good one. Yeah.
And a lot of people think that's crazy, and it sounds crazy to start. You have the emergency bypass, you know, so you got to have the few people that can call you if needed, but not giving people the ability to pound you at any time. I think especially in a work setting, because you then don't get any real focus time done.
Yeah, it's like setting boundaries, right?
Setting boundaries,
we always encourage people to do that, because if you don't do them early, you get overrun. And so it's sort of a reminder at different times in life to reassess, put up some new boundaries, and basically fortify yourself so that you can be most effective.
Totally. So I wanted to ask you, we're having a great chat. I do want to ask you this icebreaker question, because you mentioned the sleep disorder, and you're kind of hinting at some things that maybe were struggles earlier on in your journey. So we asked this to all our guests. You can take this in a professional direction or personal direction, whichever works. But we like to talk about the hard paths and get into the meaty stuff here. What was the part along your whole journey so far that almost broke you? That was really the moment where you weren't sure if you were going to make it to another day, in terms of your career or in terms of your personal?
There's a lot of hard days. There is no easy day in some ways, but I don't think I've ever been that level on the brink. And that's very deliberate. I have my own early warning signs that are partially supported by community, partially supported by my partner. And those things I think have been very effective in maintaining, I would say, avoidance of like catastrophic or on the edge scenarios. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, do struggle with depression or loneliness or unbelievable crushing, responsibility or stress. But again, the earlier you can start to practice mending some of those things, the stronger you'll be in dealing with the resiliency that is necessary to persevere in any difficult arena, whether it's in your personal life or in your professional life. So I don't want to make it sound like I've never had to deal with difficult situations. We've had, I remember in 2014, we at blockchain.com had just launched an updated version of our iOS app, and the Apple store banned all digital asset wallets. And so this was like our main distribution channel, and we were, as an industry, basically censored and prevented from basically accessing the App Store. And this was like a catastrophic problem. And so I remember I got on the phone and called every single, reporter I could get a hold of, and I said, Apple's, censoring our industry, and they aren't allowing competition, and this is really immoral, and it's against their sort of original positioning as this garden that anyone could build in, and so eventually we were re-permitted back in the store, but it took a long campaign, really, that was driven by a grassroots effort of customers saying, hey, we want to still use these products, and we want to be able to access them in Apple. So anyway, that was a tough scenario, and it could have been deadly to the company.
It's hard when you're so platform dependent. It's just so hard.
And that was a good example of like, oh my God, we have too many eggs in this sort of basket that can be, this thing can be shut down at any moment. So that was tough. There's so many specific difficult days where you've got volatility events in our market can be very severe. So for example, I was speaking to a mentor of mine who worked in finance and whole career, 50 years, and he's got like 2 or 3 episodes where he was saying, God, this is like the hardest day of my career. We watched the sovereign debt crisis in Europe erupt, or the great financial crisis, and that was very devastating. And looking back across our industry in the last 14 years, we've had 4 90% drop downs in the total asset value of the entire ecology of the ecosystem, 90% drawdowns in trading volumes, 90% drawdowns in revenue in very short periods of time. And that all happened in a decade. And so some people talk about like 1 or 2 of those events in an entire career. We have a lot of them. And so basically there have been those types of moments. But again, the sort of long-term time horizon thinking and the duration thinking, when people say it's a marathon, not a sprint, it takes a while to understand that. But again, that comes back to our like compounding against things that are really sort of aligned with what you want to spend your time on.
Yeah, it is so wild. I think crypto, we're going to argue now like AI maybe also, but like it's one of the very, very few technologies and industries where you do see that crazy cyclicality. Yeah. It is, though, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, it is somewhat predictable, which is kind of interesting. So I find that, when you're talking about some of these mentors of yours, maybe, they thought there was going to be a recession. They thought there was going to be some crisis. They hear from macroeconomists that give them some heads up. But you don't really know when things are going to hit the fan. Crypto's a little different because of the halving cycles, and people can look back and see that it is actually somewhat like beating on a certain drumbeat. How do you guys prepare for that, knowing that there is some rhythm to it? It's still very devastating, but you guys, it's to me, it reminds me a little bit of like an e-com brand that knows Christmas gets crazy and then it like dies down after. There's a little bit of like we know December is going to be this certain way.
Yeah, there's a naturalist named E.O. Wilson who has this quote I absolutely love, and I'll share it in a second. But observing cycles is something that human beings are sort of prone to do anyway. We're pattern-forming, brains, and we're always looking for these things. We see cycles in the lunar system. We see cycles in our health. We see cycles in markets and all kinds of things. And in the digital asset space and crypto specifically, there are some market events that occur, most importantly, the Bitcoin halving. So basically, Bitcoin, which was the first digital currency, basically was designed and launched as an open source computer project shortly after the great financial crisis. And it sort of inspired a lot of thinking about what could we do if we wanted to build an alternative financial system that was open, transparent, decentralized, and kind of radically different than everything we've seen previously. And so a bunch of nerds started working on this thing. And at first, it was not obvious it would work at all. But then you started seeing some early traction and growth in the industry. What was so fascinating about Bitcoin, though, was as an economic system, it's designed using a lot of hard money principles, similar to how we used to be on the gold standard. The reason we use gold as a store of value was because it's rare, it's difficult to obtain, there's a fixed amount of it in the Earth's crust, and it's relatively decentralized from an accessibility perspective. So gold has been used as a medium of exchange literally since prehistoric times. And some of the things that gold has as essentially features in it make it quite interesting as a store of value. So Bitcoin adopted those things in a software format and then added some extra features on top of it, which made it kind of fit the purpose as a type of money or wealth instrument for the age of the internet. And that has been a very persuasive sort of offering that has found product market fit over the last decade and a half. The cycles are important here because in Bitcoin, every 4 years, the total amount that comes into circulation reduces by 50%. And we have other cycles that happen like 4-year electoral cycles, among other things. And so what's interesting about this is we know very predictably that the supply of the currency that's going to become available decreases by half every 4 years. So if the supply is decreasing but the demand stays equal or grows, market prices, things that are rare, and decreasing in quantity, and those things go up in value. So that is a dynamic in the market. Now, it gets absorbed differently in each cycle, and we just know that that is going to happen. So that's like a for sure thing. How the market reacts to it is completely unknown. So the cycles differ every 4 years, but you tend to have sort of new economic participants, more people using it. There's sort of a correction because there's overhype or basically too many people participate and don't understand what they're doing. And then it persists and continues. And so that's what we've witnessed for the last 14 years. I don't know if the past performance is a perfect predictor of the future, but it has been persistent. But it does make organizing your business somewhat difficult, but somewhat predictable, just like all businesses.
Yeah, there's everyone has those factors. I will say, your definition of Bitcoin as sort of like the software layer mimicking gold and built for the age of the internet and in response to the global financial crisis, these little things you're saying, it's like probably one of the best summaries I've heard. I would expect nothing less because this is your life's work, but I really hope people really listen to that. So I know it's hard to predict what comes next, but what is your take on what comes next? I know it's hard to say, but for people that hear about Bitcoin a lot or blockchain a lot on the internet, and they're like, I kind of know what this thing is. What's your advice? What's next? And what should they be aware of?
Yeah, so Bitcoin sort of like cracked open this entire universe, like a big bang in finance. This was sort of like, oh, we didn't even know this type of thing was possible before. And what was intended to do was build a peer-to-peer electronic cash system for the internet. It's really found maybe a better use case as a store of value for the internet. Now you've got many other digital assets that are all trying to compete, and there's a proliferation of these things. And each one of those 4-year cycles tends to have sort of some themes in it. The first one was maybe early adoption, and then you went into this world where a whole bunch of people launched essentially initial coin offerings, which were just variations of new digital currencies with completely different economics. Some of them are literally jokes, like Dogecoin, which has a massive inflationary schedule and mints an unknown amount of money every few weeks. And people think that's funny, and people find social utility in jokes. That's why we pay to go watch comedians humor us. And so people also ascribe some value to that. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as an investment vehicle for people, but they need to understand that those are out there. So you've got this like crazy ecology of different digital assets. You've got layer 1 blockchains like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, like Solana, and others. And these are very serious infrastructure projects that are intended to build sort of the capabilities to build other things on top of them, including software, prediction markets, and soon the ability to launch real-world assets in a tokenized manner. And so what that really just means is you have the right to move precious information over the internet. So what's going to happen next? Well, I think there's some things you can probably accurately predict, but not necessarily on what time horizon. So the themes this year are definitely, number one, the proliferation of stablecoins. This just means dollars that are tokenized that you can move over these layer 1 blockchains. And it's a really big deal because for the first time ever, basically anyone in the world can download a wallet and instantly get access to US dollars. No more having to worry about setting up a bank account with BOA or JP Morgan Chase or whatever. They can download a wallet if they're in Turkey or Brazil or Nigeria or Switzerland or wherever, and they can get access to dollars online. So this has been a big deal because now the United States can proliferate dollars in the pockets of every person on Earth, extending U.S. dollar hegemony, and it's all settling and clearing on layer 1 blockchains. This is a monumental change that I think is going to have profound effects and ultimately bring a lot of people into the economic order of the internet, which I'm very excited about. And it's a big deal because most of these people in the world have no banking or we're never going to be able to get access to U.S. dollar accounts.
Or unstable currency, which I think maybe you can talk about Venezuela. I think that's a great, obvious example.
Yeah, a great example is if you wanted to buy a chicken in Venezuela, you would need a wheelbarrow full of cash. So countries like Venezuela or other jurisdictions that have highly inflationary or unstable currencies, the people in those countries, if they didn't have alternatives, would be subject to essentially like total wealth annihilation. And many of these people are desperate to get access to dollars, and now they have that option. So stablecoins are a big theme in 2025. I really think prediction markets are particularly interesting. These are essentially ways for retail users to sort of project or bet using capital on the outcome of something happening. And they're extremely good at doing this. So prediction markets for things like electoral results, everything from a football game to whether or not the weather will rain tomorrow. It allows sort of the wisdom of the crowd and economics to sort of guide future outcomes. And it's a really interesting dynamic. I'm pretty interested to see how those proliferate over the coming years, and I think they'll be a big deal. Probably the last thing is the tokenization of everything from equities to, in the future, kind of private assets and then real-world assets. So what do I mean by that? Today, if you want to buy a stock, you need to sign up for a brokerage account. You give them all your information, and you get access to some U.S. equities. Maybe. It's now possible, though, for those same users all over the world that can get access to dollars via stablecoins to actually trade tokenized U.S. equities on-chain. And so now, for the first time, billions of people have access to U.S. equity markets, which is a really exciting opportunity for wealth creation for them as well. And these are sort of the early dynamics. This is why you hear Larry Fink from BlackRock talking so enthusiastically himself about the tokenization of assets. And that's sort of the long-term future, is basically everything getting a property right, that property right being tokenized and able to be sort of stored and sent to anybody else in the world instantly at a very low cost.
On Trailblazers, we spotlight founders who succeed by doing things differently, not by following the playbook, but by rewriting it. Many of those unconventional builders and the VCs backing them run on Brex because it helps them scale with speed and focus. From smart corporate cards and high-yield banking to AI-powered expense management, Brex gives startups the financial stack they need from day one so they can spend more time building and less time managing back-office operations. More than 30,000 companies, from breakout startups like Anthropic and Cursor to global leaders like DoorDash and Plaid, trust Brex to help them spend smarter and move faster. That's why we, as a venture firm and also the podcast, run on Brex too. Sign up at brex.com/trailblazerspod to get started and claim exclusive rewards. That's brex.com/TRAILBLAZERSPOD. RocketReach is the leading sales and lead intelligence solution trusted by sales, marketing, recruiting, and business development teams to grow their businesses. Whether you're looking for a developer halfway around the world, a C-level executive in New York, or a potential investor in Silicon Valley, we connect you directly. With RocketReach, you can easily access the most comprehensive, accurate compilation of emails and phone numbers on Earth. That puts you in front of the right people faster and backs you up with a database that reaches across industries, markets, and titles, using AI to continually improve the quality of your contacts. With RocketReach, you can reach anyone so you can reach higher. Many of you know I love cold outreach. It's been the root of many of my success so far, and this is the tool that I've used the whole time. Trailblazer listeners get 15% off any plan at rocketreach.co/trailblazers. That's rocketreach.co/trailblazers. I love your definition of tokenization because I think that world's very intimidating for a lot of people. Maybe let's talk just briefly about why would someone, if they're listening, want to tokenize real world assets? So maybe we hear, I get as a VC get pitched all the time, let's bring, fans for music festivals online. Let's bring your real estate transactions, on chain. Why would a company want to push that? Why would a consumer want to have anything on chain? I'd love for you to explain maybe just the authentication piece, the transparency piece, and what makes that so different than just, enacting with a company online.
Yeah. So here's some examples I think that are sort of fun to explore. Now, these are not yet necessarily available, but I think they're sort of examples of what could happen in the not too distant future. So let's say an aspiring artist wants to reward their fans for streaming their music and even give them some of the economic benefits of their sponsorship deals and their ticket sales and everything else. So they could essentially tokenize their entire catalog of current and future music and distribute that to their customers and fans. And then the royalties that would be paid to them through subscriptions to online streaming services would essentially trickle down in near real time to that fan base. And this would be an alignment between the creators of content and the consumers of it in a way we've never had before, because all these other intermediaries are sitting in between these relationships and just harvesting value out of them. So that's one example. You could see another one where it's very difficult for young people today, it seems, to gain access to wealth creation vehicles, especially in real estate. What if you could own a fraction of some very valuable corporate real estate, for example, and earned income from it? So instead of, I can't maybe afford a $3 billion airport, but if we tokenize the airport and allow 10 million people to have access to it, and then some of the revenues from the landing fees and everything else were distributed to people in real time, that's kind of interesting. So real world assets, meaning things that are both physical, but then also things like music catalogs or alternative assets like whiskey collections. I interviewed someone 2 weeks ago that is tokenizing rare wine collections and allowing people to basically gain fractional ownership over that asset class. So these are things where liquidity has been deeply trapped in ways that are hard to price, and tokenization allows for all of this to basically get a property right, define a price, and allow people to trade it online.
Yeah, I think that's so unbelievably powerful, because you also don't know where the wealth is held. Like this rare
There's
wine
a lot
collection.
of sneaky wealth.
There's a lot of sneaky wealth. Yeah, we know
exactly.
that well, especially in the crypto world. You're like, I didn't realize that there's a lot of money. One thing I get so excited about, and I'd love to hear if you have a take on this, is beyond just the financial elements here, I think getting young people or people in general bought into the capitalist system of some kind is really important. So when I think about like young people now with mounting debt, no end in sight, will never feel like they'll buy a home ever, having just a fraction of ownership in something and seeing it appreciate in value, I think will get them to be more excited about capitalist principles as opposed to maybe like more socialist principles where like everyone should own something, and I find crypto to be kind of interesting at this intersection, because there's like this community ownership energy, which is sort of a socialist energy, right? Like the kibbutzes in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Everyone owns a piece. But then also there's this like capitalist vibe to it where actually, no, if you own something and you work hard for it, it can appreciate even if it's just a slice of a big pie. So I don't know, I'd love to hear if you have a take on that, just sort of like how this impacts young people in the next generation and understanding these like complicated systems that I think right now a lot of people don't feel like they've stake in the game.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's honestly one of the reasons I got so passionate about the industry in the first place. I joined the working world really in 2007, and I had friends that were, moving into positions on Wall Street, and then everyone just got absolutely annihilated in the great financial crisis. Unemployment was high, people lost their homes, all kinds of really tragic outcomes from that. And I really believed like we were basically lied to, that our big institutions had failed, that they had all of this absurd greed, that the mechanisms for preventing disastrous outcomes were widely ignored and weren't implemented. And so it felt like the institutions that we had no agency in shaping or supporting, were colossally flawed. And so that's when I learned about Bitcoin, I was so fascinated by it because it adhered to these sort of hard money principles, and it also allowed regular people to sort of participate voluntarily. So to me, that was interesting because it was just a consensual thing. You want to use it, you can. If you think it's not a good idea, then don't use it, no problem. And so it sort of allowed for this sort of voluntary and very grassroots adoption to occur. And it's so important to understand that this was like a very retail-driven phenomena. No one was putting a gun to anybody's head and saying, you got to use, dollars or pounds or this other thing. People adopted it because they wanted to. And a lot of it came from a reaction to these failed institutions, the sort of loss of trust in our financial system that was bailed out. And when that happened, everyone lost like significant amount of their purchasing power. And I think one of the things that I forget which comedian it was that said, but like basically crypto combines everything people don't understand about computers with everything they don't understand about money. And
that's a good line.
And it's kind of true, and it's frustrating because money is something that is not it makes people uncomfortable to talk about, but it drives so many of your life's opportunities and stress points. And it's a conversation that more people need to have with their kids earlier on about like where money comes from and why does something have value or wealth. And money is an old idea. It's essentially a social construct that's prehistoric, us being able to even write things down. There are examples of humans conducting commerce with each other, which is why you find beads and burial sites in northern Scotland that came from the Middle East that are 7,000 years old. And so what is money? Money is a social construct that allows us to exchange wealth over time. And it basically is an ever-improving technological system. We used beads. Some societies used feathers. Others carved stones. We tried coins. We've tried dollar bills. We've tried paper money. They've tried electronic systems. And now we're moving into sort of new evolution of these things, which are digital assets, predominantly anchored around concepts designed by Bitcoin and then being further refined and experimented on. And so what kind of money do you want, to work with and interact with? And today, young people, especially in first world countries where we've always thought of ourselves as like highly stable and our currencies are so great and strong, not like those Venezuelans that, basically print absurd amounts of money and debase their currency. Well, unfortunately, the design of the currency in Venezuela is not too dissimilar from the design of currencies in major economies, including Japan, the EU, and even the US. So you are subject to the total supply of currency that is being created artificially all the time, partially through injection by the Federal Reserve, and then multiplied through constant credit creation, through lending and the money multiplier effect. And it's kind of if people really kind of peel back the onion, they go, oh my gosh, why would I want this thing that constantly gets devalued? And I think young people actually, when they hear about this and learn about it, it sparks an interest in thinking about, well, how do I, what can I do to preserve some wealth, and what other alternatives are there? And so there's a lot of this is quite a generational phenomenon, and I think it's an important one for millennials and then Gen A and Gen Z to really get a hold of. There's not much more real estate left on Earth. It was conquered and it is captured and is owned by older generations. The opportunities to be homesteaders and farmers and create wealth in that way is just gone. We got to find other mechanisms, and this is one we can help build and shape and own. And so for me, those are some of the arguments. But I do think what's cool about crypto is it sort of lets anybody in. If you have an interest in art and communities and collective ownership, there's lots of cool projects you can get involved in and participate in crypto. If you are a cypherpunk capitalist and you want to have a lot of privacy, you can do that here too. And if you're a gold bug and you just want to stockpile, something that is decreasing in supply, for the next millennia, then buy some Bitcoin, stack your sats, and that can be your little participation in this economy. And if you think all of that doesn't make any sense, then just buy some stable coins, conduct your commerce online. It's better, cheaper, faster than MasterCard, Visa, or sending wires, and you can stick with digital dollars. Just know that they're going to settle and clear on digital asset fabrics underneath it all. And so you can own some of the bandwidth of those by owning Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana as base assets. So those are some of the things to understand about this kind of future economy and what the internet is doing to money in general and the financial system.
Totally. I mean, very brilliant explanations, and I think going to be very helpful for a lot of people. How do we get them to understand the value of the dollar going down with the crazy amount of printing that we're doing? And then that in contrast with the push for stable coins, it's almost a contradictory argument, right? Stable coins, yes, it's so exciting that they're, you can bring the US dollars online, but the US dollar is losing value every day with how much we're printing it. So I'd love to understand, how do we educate people to understand this and, get them to buy into the system when sometimes they're being told the message, interact everything with stable coins, be online, but also, the dollar is just like Venezuela and it's sort of being devalued and, we don't know how this debt's going to play out. So how do you rationalize that for someone that feels conflicted?
Well, it's not so much a rationalization so much as you need to probably understand supply and demand dynamics. And there's a reason why we don't use blades of grass or grains of sand as currency, because there's sort of an unlimited amount of them. And so they don't hold their value very well. There's a great website called Fred.com, which is the United States Federal Reserve's think tank and basically statistical website. And you can go look up M1, which is the total supply of all dollars in the world, and go look at the chart. You will see an unbelievable change from 2008 to 2020, where the currency supply quadruples over a decade. And this was completely unprecedented in American economics, which was during the bailout and the quantitative easing to basically save the financial system. But then the currency supply goes up like a candlestick when they printed almost $8 trillion, just injected it out of completely thin air into the economy because of the COVID crisis. Now, arguably, there were maybe some reasons to intervene there that we'd never seen anything like it. It was unprecedented, and there was unknown potential health consequences. I'm not trying to make any arguments about any of that. Just go look at the supply and see what happened. When you rapidly increase the supply of something in any market, the value of all the underlying things changes. So if I create 600 billion gallons of milk tomorrow, the price of milk everywhere is going to collapse to basically nothing, and that's the risk. And so we don't really have a way to model out what the implications of that are because we've never really been through this experiment. And so again, I think there's sort of this kind of crazy trust question of can that huge wick of dollars kind of be successfully absorbed, potentially through this strategy of proliferating dollars globally through stablecoins, or not? And I think that's the big question mark about stablecoins in general, but really it's just a question about the dollar. So again, as an actor in this space and someone who's been at it from essentially the Big Bang moment in crypto, I just want people to understand what they're dealing with, and at the end of the day, make an educated decision about what's right for you. And so maybe owning and trying to save a little bit of your income every single month. I have some frustrating news for people. I can help you become wealthy. The problem is it's just going to take a long time. And so you have to take a little bit of your savings if you're just an income or salaried person, and unfortunately, it's you have to delay gratification. Don't go to the movies this weekend. Don't buy the fanciest car possible. Manage your grocery spending in such a way that you're not shopping at the edge of your means every single month. And be disciplined about those things. Take 10% of your income and then figure out some things to put it into. You can buy some digital assets. You can buy some stocks. You can own some cash. But if you own dollars, understand that every single day, the value of those dollars is deteriorating through inflation. And that is dangerous for companies. It's dangerous for households. And so the same conversation, by the way, happens not just at the table here in a podcast. It's happening in boardrooms, and it's happening at the dinner table of families across America all the time, which is grocery bills are going up, fuel is going up. Why is this happening? Well, it's not just that companies are evil and bad and profit-seeking. It's that the currency is being debased at a rapid rate. And so these are things we have to grapple with, and we should hold our politicians to account. We should hold our institutions to account. And then we also need to build alternatives. And that's why entrepreneurs can step into these situations and reimagine our relationship with money by creating alternative systems.
Yeah, and that's where I get excited.
Exactly.
I love how you're framing it too with, now a lot of people have their money in cash and then in ETFs,
Yep.
Stocks and bonds. Those are kind of the two spots, cash you think of as very liquid now, and ETFs hopefully, especially when you retire, those have gained a lot of value. But there's this third asset, which is sort of this cryptocurrency that I think it's really smart for people to think of on a scale that being going to take extra long to probably see, the fruits of the labor and be not as liquid, but it's sort of on that scale, sort of on that higher end, something for people to think about versus dividing their money in half, maybe thirds is more of the approach.
Yeah.
Well,
we call it just, and if you work with a financial advisor, they'll usually, try and ask you what your goals are, but it's ultimately about building a portfolio and then managing the risk in that portfolio. And so I think it's just important now that people understand that there's an alternative asset class called digital assets and cryptocurrencies, and it should be considered in this collection of things you can potentially allocate into.
Absolutely. And everyone's percentages are different.
Correct.
We're not giving financial advice. Okay. I did want to quickly just touch on sky's the limit before we get through our lightning round, because you and I have chatted about that. You're doing some really exciting stuff there. So obviously blockchain.com is a behemoth and that takes a lot of your time, but tell everyone what sky's the limit is, why you're spending some time on that, and what they should know.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. So there's two things I'm passionate about in the world. One is reinventing people's relationship with money and wealth, and blockchain.com helps us do that. The other thing, though, is I really believe strongly that through entrepreneurship, we can build a more equal society. We can provide wealth creation opportunities for communities, but we really need to inspire the next generation, both of Americans and entrepreneurs globally, to practice entrepreneurship, to pursue it as a path, to see role models in that space, and share advice and mentorship and allyship while you're building businesses. And so we wrote a book called Building Businesses Together with my co-founder, Bo, and that's about lessons that we've learned over the last decade and a half working with tens of thousands of small businesses that are at the idea stage. They've got an itch. And one of the things I love about this is that absolutely everybody starts off as an entrepreneur. My question to everybody is, how did you earn your first buck? And you find out that people were either selling lemonade, or they were, taking the garbage out for the grandparents and earned a few shillings or whatever, or they, they were a babysitter or whatever. So we all start off as entrepreneurs, and then some of us go off to become employed by some company, or we pursue a vocation, or we become doctors or something else. But everybody starts off as an entrepreneur. So really is a viable path for literally everybody. But we don't teach entrepreneurship in schools, and it's so widely misunderstood. I think people go, well, I'll never be like Elon Musk. Well, that's a ridiculous outcome. Like, he's an incredible innovator and an entrepreneur himself, obviously, but there are so many other paths to pursue here. So Sky's the Limit was set up to really solve kind of a market failure right now, which is for the earliest stage entrepreneurs that maybe didn't have a chance to graduate high school or even go to university to learn about business or the foundations of kind of financial management or anything, to go and practice entrepreneurship. And so you can sign up for free. We have entrepreneurship missions, which are sort of like tasks in a video game that'll help you think about why you want to do this, who your customer might be, what kind of budgets they might have to purchase, and give you all these workbooks and toolkits to sort of learn a little bit more about how to build a business, and do so in a way that also comes with support from peers and mentors and advisors that we recruit from really amazing companies like Accenture, Goldman Sachs, PNC Bank, and others that are really caring about the next generation of young business owners and bring their time and talents to support them. And lastly, we have a funding system, and we support early stage entrepreneurs with monthly grants. We've given away a ton of money to entrepreneurs that just need a little bit of cash that they can't get maybe from friends or family, because if you don't have a credit score, or you never got a little bit of money saved up to the side, you should still get a chance to pursue building a business too. So Sky's Limit is a totally digital platform for doing this. We operate both in the US and the UK, and we've had entrepreneurs find us from over 60 countries around the world. I'm proud to say we just passed over 100,000 entrepreneurs on Sky's the Limit. So it's been a really great year for all this work. But we just see it as the beginning. There's just millions of young people entering the workforce that may not know which direction to turn to. And I just encourage them to look at entrepreneurship and go practice it. Like, I'm probably not going to be an amazing figure skater, but if I go every day and start practicing, I'm going to build up that muscle. If I find something I'm passionate about, if I learn about how to listen to customers and figure out what their problems are, and I can solve that problem and do it in a sustainable way, then I can pay myself, I can hire people, I can invest in the causes I care about, and I can proliferate wealth in my community and more. So that's Sky's the Limit. We'd welcome anyone to come check it out and support us, either in the form of mentorship to other entrepreneurs, or if you're thinking about getting started and you really don't know where to go. We don't care what your business idea is. It doesn't have to be a tech company. Most of our entrepreneurs are signing up. They're doing things with the resources they have. They might be setting up a catering business in their kitchen. They might be setting up a small service business to mow lawns in their neighborhood. And everybody can get better at building businesses and then compound that knowledge, if they desire to build bigger and more successful companies.
I love this. And I think it's also reframing what entrepreneurship looks like, because I think, to your point, everyone thinks of Elon as like the ultimate businessman, business person. And actually the catering business is very much a business,
there's
the
a lot of great
business.
companies that are, that don't have these colossal outcomes that are very, very like should be completely celebrated. And so I just want people to know that there's a lot of different paths to success. And it doesn't mean that you have to compete with Elon Musk building rocket ships.
I love that. And like you said, to kind of bring it full circle from the start of our chat, it's all about compounding. You show up figure skating every day, you will get better.
Yep.
You tinker every day, you go through the missions, like, you will get better, you will get more comfortable. And with every customer, you build something they want more and more. If you work in venture or startups, you know the constant juggling act. Replying to messages from co-investors, founders, LPs, customers, and teammates all hitting your personal number. I know this very well. We all hand out our cell, which means your EA can't help an iMessage, and important threads get buried. That's why I'm very excited about Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's built for founders and investors like us who want communication that feels personal but stays organized. Quo gives you a dedicated business line on your existing cell phone. And if you already have a business number, you can bring it with you for free. Plus, you'll get call summaries, transcripts, and an AI voice agent called Sona that can answer and schedule when you're offline. We're actually cooking up something fun with the Quo team right now and using that same voice AI tech in a new way for our firm. More soon, but it's a great reminder that you can use voice AI to stay top of mind of your customers' needs. Quo is trusted by over 90,000 businesses and rated number 1 on G2 for customer satisfaction. You can get 20% off your first 3 months at quo.com/trailblazers. That's quo.com/trailblazers. So I've actually used Gusto at 3 different companies, and every time it's been such a relief. It's simple, it's reliable, and my paycheck was always on time, no drama. And unlike the big clunky payroll systems out there, Gusto is online payroll and benefit software specifically built for small businesses. It's all-in-one, remote-friendly, and incredibly easy to use, so you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. For smaller startups in particular, I have found that it's the most affordable and easy to set up option, and it's the one that we recommend to all of our startups at our firm. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/trailblazers and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/trailblazers. One more time, gusto.com/trailblazers. Amazing. Okay, well, let's get to our lightning round.
Okay.
Book in hand or podcast in ears?
Ooh, book in hand. I just read a really funny science fiction book that I've been recommending to a few people. It's a trilogy, and it's called We Are Bob. And it's all about
Love the name.
It's a very funny title, but it's basically a book about an artificial intelligence. And in a not too distant future, an entrepreneur basically gets hit by a bus, wakes up in a computer system, and the geopolitical situation on Earth is very complicated because different jurisdictions have decided to compete in building AGI, and then they all have to leave the planet and battle it all out in space. So it's kind of a wild theoretical exercise of like what this could look like if it, if geopolitics and AI and sci-fi kind of merged. But anyway, kind of a weird one, but it's a nerdy book. Yeah.
Sounds interesting, and a lot of your interests sort of combined in one. There's did you ever watch the show Upload?
Yeah.
Kind of a similar, like you're dead and then you wake up in a computer. Yep. And obviously it doesn't have the sci-fi angle, but it's interesting to think about what's going to happen in the future with consciousness. Morning person or night owl?
Night owl, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
How late? How late are you? Are you more of like go to bed late or are you more wake up late?
Well, I'm a wake up early, go to bed late kind of person, but I'm not a morning person. I used to be in my 20s, and then when I moved to work predominantly in Europe for the last 10 years, just because of the overlap with American colleagues, you just tend to get dragged into later hours. But I also find that I'm kind of more productive later in the day anyway.
Yeah, I think actually more people are than they admit. Like, it's actually really nice to work in the evenings. Cooking dinner or ordering in?
Oh, I cook, yeah.
Oh, you're a cook. Okay,
yeah,
tell me more.
That's probably
one
of my favorite hobbies. But also this kind of comes back to like one of those little things to sort of maybe invest in a little bit in your 20s when you don't think you've got time to ever like learn how to do this. But nutrition is hugely important to your health, and connecting to seasonal food and cooking, and I personally find it very therapeutic. It's also unforgiving. If you have the wrong temperature or over salt or whatever, like you can blow it up. And so you need to be paying attention. And I really enjoy cooking, but especially for guests and company if we've got anyone over.
I love that. Do you have a secret dish that you're just like, this is always a killer?
I got a few staples that I go back to. There's some stuff that takes a long time to prepare, and then you've got your 20-minute ones you can whip out. Yeah.
Cool. VC or bootstrapping?
It depends. I think I've learned that both paths are viable, and at the end of the day, it really comes down to the goals for the entrepreneur, and so it requires a conversation. I think at the end of the day, you sort of should bootstrap as far as you can. It'll be advantageous to you and your business for the most part, but there can be a vulnerable moment, especially if the type of business you're working in benefits from essentially accelerant capital. And so if you get to that point and you don't take it and someone else does, then you could very much jeopardize the opportunity for your company. That being said, taking venture capital too early can be problematic for other reasons, and you can trade huge amounts of control or other issues longer term. So it's a balancing act, but working with great venture partners can be extremely valuable for you as well as a business owner. But you just also it's not the only path. There's lots of other ways to get capital. You can get loans. You can, anyway, there's lots of options.
Or just use your profits to fuel your growth.
Or build a sustainable business that just
exactly.
grows naturally, and you have total control over it, and you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself. That's kind of nice.
That also works. Yeah, it depends. I think your point too about it being very market dependent is something I find myself saying a lot. There are certain markets where you kind of have to. Networking dinner or big conference?
I think the smaller format stuff is better these days. But that being said, one of the things entrepreneurs I deal with a lot at Sky's the Limit is they don't have a comfort in selling, and they think that selling is dirty or it's just something they don't want to lean into. And unfortunately, all founders really do need to build this muscle up too. They got to practice doing their 30-second pitch, their 60-second pitch, their 5-minute lecture on it. And conferences can be a really good way to practice that. You're going to run into hundreds of people. Some of them will be completely not useful to you, but that muscle of building up that practice of pitching yourself and what your business is about is, at the end of the day, going to help you find customers, refine your story, and your market, your contact with the market, basically, and potential customers is critical in helping you understand whether or not the problem in your solution to it is viable. So I would say sometimes conferences, but ultimately the smaller, more intimate opportunities to talk tend to be better for people being more honest about things. In the UK, where I've spent a lot of time, they have this concept of Chatham House rules, which is basically a way of saying we're all going to speak truthfully, but we won't attribute any of the things we hear here to anybody else. And it allows for this sort of honesty and vulnerability that you don't get in a quick transactional conversation.
This also goes back to our earlier point about in-person work versus digital work. Everything gets attributed to each person because there's a digigal trail.
100%.
When you're in person, water cooler talk, it disappears in the wind.
Exactly.
Okay, hire slow or fire fast?
So hiring is one of the hardest things to do well. And unfortunately, you're probably going to get it wrong as a founder and entrepreneur more times than you could possibly believe, and you'll be disappointed for such novel reasons. So I do think you need to set expectations quickly. If they're not meeting, if your colleague that you've just recently recruited is not meeting those expectations, make the tough call, but make it quickly.
Okay, so fire fast. 10 small wins or one big moonshot?
As someone that has done both, the big moonshot feels extremely gratifying when it pays off, but the number of those that work is very limited. And again, this is where the 10 small wins compound over time. And so for most situations in most businesses, I would say compounding the small wins lets you build momentum over the duration and is a more assured path to probably getting to the outcome you want. There's a lot of risk in placing all of your bets, all of your time on one crazy maneuver. And once in a while it works, and I think a lot of people love to celebrate those things, but it comes, you don't hear for most part of all the catastrophic wipeouts that don't work because people reinvent themselves and usually go back down the path of the small wins to get to where they're going.
Absolutely.
So sorry, that wasn't a
that
definitive
was very
answer,
helpful.
but
it was 10 small wins.
I would go with the 10 small wins probably.
Listen, the reason these questions are here is they're hard to answer, so there's nuance. Being early or being right?
Well, being early can also be the same as being wrong sometimes. It can be very frustrating. And I think this happens to a lot of entrepreneurs where they see a problem in the world, whether it's a climate crisis or an issue in AI or whatever, and they're super early with something completely complex, and then they wait forever for the market to come to them. And if you are too early, it can be the same as being wrong. And one of the most aggravating things as an entrepreneur is to watch other people come in on the same space with a nearly identical idea as yours and then be successful. So, timing is key, but perseverance and survival really does win the day. And the point I would make to most entrepreneurs is do everything you can to stay alive so that you can be in position when you can catch the wave, catch the moment, and maybe catch lightning in a bottle and have that crazy outcome, or be persistent with it and get those wins along the way.
Did you think when you were starting blockchain.com you were too early? Because you were one of the first.
I knew for sure that crypto was going to be very interesting. And I thought it would be like an intellectually very compelling challenge to participate in helping bring product offerings to the market. And so I was convinced I would learn a lot, and I convinced I would be influential in helping shape it. And those two things were highly motivating to me. And I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but I was pretty confident that at least it would be influential. And I had no idea in my wildest dreams that we would be as far along as we are today, 15 years later. But I knew the technology was very novel. We were totally early. Like, the people that were using crypto in 2011 and 12, it was basically a bunch of internet nerds, and it was so complicated to use. And I remember, most of my friends and, even family members were like, what are you doing with your career? Like, that is just never going to work. It's Beanie Babies online. It's all a Ponzi scheme, and it's just, it's absolutely never going to work. And I disagreed with all those things, but sometimes it takes a while for your perspective to be sort of understood.
I think a lot of it's just conviction also in your own point of view and your own belief, even when other people don't agree. Amazing. Okay, never post on social media again or never fundraise another dollar again.
I'd be happy never posting on social media again. That's fine with me.
Yeah, just be offline.
Yeah.
AI overhyped or underhyped?
I think aspects of it are definitely overhyped. Probably, I think all of the colossal investments in some of the data centers and even I would say like the bubbles around some of the chip makers today, it's just hard for me to see how it doesn't invite alternative ways of getting similar outcomes. And just like there's a certain number of pixels in a screen that the human eye can detect, like there's some level of this inference and some level of this capability that humans won't really be able to tell like the minutia of the difference and the advantage of it. So I'm sort of a little bit skeptical about all of that as it's in sort of the price points for it. But the implications of AI for enhancing everything from productivity to health outcomes to more, I think, are extraordinary. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's going to be complicated, and one of the only things I'm sure of at all in the world today is that things are probably going to get weird pretty fast.
Yeah, we're going to be living in We Are Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. Nick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for hosting. It was really fun.
Appreciate it. On Trailblazers, we're always talking about multiplying your impact, and that's exactly what Athena helps you do. Athena pairs you with a world-class executive assistant who becomes a true force multiplier for your business and your life. Working with my Athena assistant has been transformative. Gab was instrumental in raising Park Rangers Capital's fund in ways that I could have never imagined an assistant could contribute. From closing six-figure checks to identifying new LPs we should meet to matching my tone perfectly in follow-up emails. He's elevated my capacity as a founder by giving me more time to focus on the highest leverage work. Athena isn't just about scheduling meetings, it's about unlocking leverage. Hundreds of founders, investors, and executives trust Athena to free their time and scale their impact. Athena is offering our listeners $2,000 off for their first year of service and priority onboarding. And you want that, trust me, there's a very long wait list. When you're ready to multiply your impact and free up time for the things only you can do, go to athenago.me/Erica-Wenger. That's athenago.me/ERICA-WENGER. Thanks so much for listening to the Trailblazers podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. You can also support our work by sharing it with a friend or leaving a quick review. It helps more contrarian builders find us. For more on Park Rangers Capital and our community of elephant founders, head to parkrangerscap.com or find me online at Erica_Wenger. Until next time, keep trailblazing.